welcome back to the channel. I'm hanging out today with my good friend Johnny Tahali in his 2007 Porsche Cayman S. I've known Johnny for about, I don't know, 20 years almost now. Haven't we known each other?
I'd say about 26 now.
Yeah, you and I have been doing car stuff for quite some time, off and on together in various forms. And you came across this 2007 Porsche by absolute luck.
100%.
And you found it outside of California, right?
Yeah, I found it in Nevada.
No kidding.
I was just searching the nation for just like, you know, reliable, good priced Porsches, and this one popped up, and a terrible ad, very little information, a cropped picture, but I'm like, the title was, you know, it was a 2007 Cayman S, and I'm like, with low miles, and I was just like, is this real? So I started messaging the guy, and he immediately started responding. He had a pretty low price on it anyways. It was about, you know, 10,000 under market, and so I offered to come, you know, check it out. He was in Las Vegas, and he's like, I'm leaving town. I was like, all right. He's like, I'll be back in a week. I'm gonna let it mature to see if anybody will give me more or whatever. And I said, that's fine. He's all, but I'll give you first chance to come at it. Perfect.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah. And then he left for a week, came back that, you know, I messaged him the day he got back. He's like, I haven't had any hits on it. And I'm like, well, in my head, I'm like, it's because you have a terrible ad and it's not listed anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know, most people will list a car in multiple places. And so I had him send me a cold start video, kind of more details, had him walk around the car with his camera, just to show me every little bit. And I'm like, God, this thing is flawless for a 2007. It's just, I mean, most people think it's like, they're like, did you pull this out of a dealership? And so, you know, I flew up that day, one-way ticket, and drove back the following day.
No kidding. Well, that's the advantage of living in, you know, Southern California. We're so close to Nevada and Arizona, where you can find decent car deals sometimes outside of our market, and then you find things like this. Now, the fact that it's a 2007, this really is kind of the entry level into Porsche ownership, because it's not a brand new GT2, GT3, 911 Carrera. It's actually a little bit more affordable for the general consumer, guys like you and I, who are car guys, but we can't go out and spend $250,000 on a brand new Porsche, because that's what the market is like right now. I mean, the days of $150,000 Porsche 911 just doesn't exist anymore because of what's going on in the car market. You and I both know guys that have worked for Porsche and have owned Porsches. In fact, our friend Jason, who had the GT4, he found his in a pretty decent deal and then owned it for about a year, got rid of it, and now the guy has a Corvette. So tell me you're 40 without telling me you're 40. You know, you and I are at that point. And the Cayman is really kind of almost a half boxer, half 911. 3.4 liter flat six engine that makes 295 horsepower. And you're in a vehicle that weighs less than 3,000 pounds. And you've got some added bonuses with the S model because you have a little bit better braking system. And if you notice, you guys can see in the camera footage, we've got a 6-speed manual. And we're just cruising this morning. We're going through the backside of Lake Hodges here on Via del Valle, where I do a lot of testing here in San Diego on different vehicles. And it's great to be able to have something with a manual transmission, because it really gives good feedback back to the driver as you're going down the road. Obviously, we're just cruising, but we've got some roads up here coming up that we're going to go and enjoy and really get to test the feedback of the vehicle to the driver. How does the suspension feel? What kind of, you know, driving feel do you really get out of this? Because with Porsche, they've really had that kind of ability to have you buy a vehicle and you don't need to do too much to really make it more of a driver. Whereas, you know, you go out and have like a Honda, a Toyota, a Nissan, you know, some of the tuners, guys like to do things with those because they want to put the aftermarket parts on it. Right. Porsche, thankfully, you don't really have to do that too much. Now, guys definitely go out and do that because guys go do track days with them. They put the better suspension on them. They convert things back and forth, and it makes it to where you have more of a track car. This is a good weekend. Go to Cars and Coffee if you want to go up to a mountain and go take a mountain run with a bunch of the Porsche enthusiasts or car enthusiasts. You can go really enjoy the car. So you're lucky to be able to have something like this and be able to just enjoy it. You know, and of course, you've had a number of cars. What brought you over to Porsche? Because you've never really seen like a Porsche guy.
Well, speaking of like the tuner scene, you know, I grew up. When I was a child, you know, all of the neighbors were muscle cars or lowriders.
You and I grew up in the same town.
So muscle cars, I got all of the power, the speed, the oomph out of, you know, like that was just all the older guys would always be working on them.
Sure.
And then I also, in the same neighborhood, had guys working on their lowriders. So I got that customization scene, seeing them change parts out, customizing them, personalizing them, you know, just I got all of that. So, you know, from the Dayton wire wheels all the way down to like, you know, American racing wheel stuff, I was all over the place. And then when I finally was, you know, old enough to drive, the import scene was just at its infancy, you know, it was just starting.
That. You and I were there together during that.
Yeah.
It was right around, I mean, I graduated in 96 and you were what, 97?
97, yeah.
So we were there right when imports became huge and suddenly it was Hondas versus domestics, or if you had a small 4-cylinder based vehicle, and what it is today is nothing what it was then. Everyone was putting an intake on the car, headers, and exhaust system. You weren't doing cams, you weren't doing turbo swaps, you weren't doing big cylinder head swaps then. Now, of course, that's kind of the thing to do. People figured out how to make the horsepower and how to make those cars work with that kind of modification. So, of course, as things have evolved, and as you and I have evolved, of course, through what we've driven, and I've driven a bunch of different cars. I haven't owned too many, but I'm lucky enough to drive a bunch of different things, and of course, experience a bunch of different stuff like you have. Then you come up on something like this. So you're at that peak now.
I've just, I've driven the range from, an 88 Civic or an 88 CRX. Being able to take those apart and mess with the car, you're not losing a ton of money trying to fix it, do this, take parts. You're not losing anything. So that was a good way to build up. And like you said, putting aftermarket parts, trying to get it a little faster, getting a little bit more there, to try to get it to this point. You're spending a ton of money researching, but putting those cars together once you know what you're doing. I mean, I can go buy, and you can go buy a tuner right now, fix it up, or even like a Charger or a Mustang or something like that, and know exactly what we need to do to get it to where we'd like to drive.
Yeah, and what we like to feel.
Right, and so through our friends, through driving stuff, I've just like you, I've driven everything under the sun from this Porsche to a new 911 or a new 911 Turbo S, which are great. And the thing is, with those Porsches, they're so much bigger. And reading up on the history of Porsches, I was looking at 911s, like a Carrera GT or something like that. And then I kind of got on the Cayman, and I was like, huh. Remember Jason had the GT4?
Yeah, he had a great driving car, but he never really drove it.
He never drove it.
When I would drive it.
That's why he has a Corvette and New Balances now. Yeah. So that's what I mean. It was a great car. Once he got it, the first thing I said, I was like, dude, this is the perfect canyon cutter track. Take it to the track, drive it home that day car.
That's what the car was built for.
And so I kind of looked more into the Caymans for that reason, because it's a mid-engine as opposed to the rear engine of most other Porsches, and so you have that 50-50 weight balance pretty close. And I was like, okay, and I started seeing people that were tracking these. The S's, especially since it's a 6-speed manual, and you'll feel it in the power. You get all, having just around 300 horsepower stock, you get all of it. Yeah, you get all of it all the time.
Yeah, the fact that we're under 3,000 pounds, now with you and I sitting in it, we're probably a little bit over. You add, fluids and how much fuel you have in the car. But that still puts down quite a bit of performance. Now, the Cayman, of course, is sort of the weird mix where it sort of has to where it looks like a Boxer and it looks like a 911 in the back. And that was always the thing that the purists couldn't stand, because they didn't like the half look of the vehicle.
Right.
It's almost like Porsche.
It's because it looks like it droops down, but that is because the motor is in the middle.
Yeah, and a little bit of it's almost like Porsche's trying to find its identity when they had this car. Because when they first came out with it, the Boxster was sort of the thing where that's what you let the wife drive when you had the 911, because you didn't want her driving your Carrera, your fast high-end car. Well, then the Boxster started to have kind of this niche sort of following, which my parents have a Boxster. They ended up buying I believe it's a 2014, and it's a pretty rare, it's a mahogany brown metallic with tan interior. It's got 911 Carrera wheels on it. And the thing, for what it is, it's light and nimble, it's convertible, it's definitely your weekend driver fun car. It's, your little go-kart type car. This definitely, just going through some of the turns that we're going through, has some pretty good feedback back to me. I mean, it's letting me know sort of where the car likes to be. I could probably even push it a little harder through here.
Yes.
And it would give me really good feedback back. We've got some traffic in front of us. I don't want to go racing up on people that don't know what we're doing. So I got to kind of watch it on some of these tests. But just in the feedback that I'm getting, it definitely has.
You will feel all of the road, which was something I read up on. So what sold me on these when I was actually looking, that whole week I had while I was waiting to see if the guy was going to call me back and make sure I could still get it. You can feel it and hear it.
Oh yeah.
You can feel it, and you get all of it.
Oh yeah, and it's got that good Porsche sound to it that everyone really likes.
That flat six, and the good thing is we have intake right here.
Yeah, the flat six sound out of this really picks up, and of course it doesn't have quite as much horsepower as the motor that was in the 911, because I believe this shares the motor with the 911 of the model year. Now the reason why Porsche did that, and I think it's because you can do some other modifications with one of these. And I think what you have to do to really get it to that horsepower level is you have to change the throttle body, the intake manifold, do different injectors. I think you have to change the cam, the exhaust, and then put a different tune on it. Now by the time you've done that, you've dumped almost 10 grand into one of these to put those modifications into that car, which I don't know about you, but 10 grand into a Porsche, to me, almost seems like you might as well just go buy the next model.
Yeah, right. And what I got to do, and what I actually got to test the day before yesterday, is our buddy has a 2010 911 Carrera.
Okay.
And
so you took Moab's car out.
Well, we were with each other. We went up, we were driving up the freeway, and his car has, I think, a 3.6, so it's just slightly bigger than this.
A little bit bigger.
And like you were saying with the horsepower differences, so on this car there's a couple parts, just a few aftermarket parts. It has an agency power exhaust, just to kind of give it a better flow. And then we have a GT3 short shifter, which I'm sure you can feel.
It definitely wants to shift quick, which is nice.
All from Porsche. And then it also has a GT3 throttle body, like you were saying, and a GT3 plenum, which gives it that extra air.
Yeah.
So that horsepower boost that you get out of that, and the response that you get out of that. We were on the freeway yesterday. He, our buddy is he races everything.
Yeah, we all get that opportunity to be.
If you want to see how much he races, you can Google Airborne GTR. And he's the one that launches his. But anyways, so we're on the freeway, just open freeway, and he looks at me and just smiles, and I was like, so I downshift.
You knew where that was going.
Put my sprint booster on, which I'll talk about in a sec, and we took off. And for a second, I was sticking him, and he was just like, what's happening? And then I really just kind of mashed it.
Yeah.
And I just pulled on him the whole time.
Holy cow.
And he was just like, we finally caught up to me. He was like, what the hell? And I'm like, so I think those little tweaks, the little differences actually made up, and the lightweight, the one thing you have to worry about with the 911s, and it's not that I don't want one or wouldn't get one, it's more about the fact that I'm a canyon cutter. I like the twisties, I like the roads, I like racing, or, going around turns, doing stuff.
Yeah, I enjoy that
kind
as
of
well.
pushing it and just feeling, all of that. And with a 911, you have to you have to learn the oversteer, because you have the engine is all the way in the back.
That's something that
over
Porsche
the real
has
wheel
fought for years now. Of course, as technology is advanced and you have electronic aids, that's changed a lot. And in fact, I worked for a Porsche shop right around 2000. I was there, I want to say like 2006. I was with a local Porsche shop here that did mostly service work for Porsche and BMW. But then, of course, we would get the race car and performance stuff in there because we would help the guys that did the endurance racing. And because I'm a skinny guy and the mechanics weren't exactly skinny guys, they would put me in cup cars and say, hey, take it up the street and make sure that this is adjusted right. Make sure that this, isn't going to rattle apart on the customer when he's on the track, because he's going to be going, 100 plus into a corner there up in Fontana or up in Willow Springs or out of Chuckwalla at the time. So I've got a little bit of Porsche experience, and it's great to be able to have this chance to drive this, because it definitely has a good driving feel to it. Now, like you said, we are going to feel a little bit of the road. Being a little bit of an overcar, you're going to feel the road. But
that's what I liked about it.
You get the feedback back as to what the car is doing, and it really kind of tells you, okay.
Well, it tells you not to overperform.
Yeah, you got this going on, you got this going on, but we're just cruising it somewhat spiritedly, and this is a good drive. This is a good weekend drive, go get coffee, go to Cars and Coffee and hang out with all the Porsche enthusiasts, go up a mountain road with all the driving guys, like, go take a morning drive somewhere. I mean, it's got really good feedback. Good area from here.
So what sold me? What sold me on this during that week was, I was doing some research on the specific car, and I come across multiple Matt Farah reviews of this exact same car.
Yeah, Matt really enjoys this car.
And Matt is a driver. He pushes it. He loves to do all of his reviews. He generally does it in a canyon, up in LA.
Yeah.
He loves, and he loves the newer ones. He loves, he's driven $4.5 million Bugattis and pushed the living hell out of them.
Oh, he's driven some great stuff.
If you watch any of his videos, even like the 765 LT from McLaren, and then you watch him drive this car, this specific car, like this model year, he starts giggling.
Oh,
he gets really joyous, and he's like, I miss this. He's like, there's everything about this car is exactly what you want out of a car, and especially from something out of the box that you can actually get into for fairly cheap.
Yeah.
He's like, this is ridiculous. And he pushed to an article that says that if the creator of Porsche was alive today, this would be the last car he would say was an actual Porsche. He said everything else is bigger, crazy horsepower, which is so much fun. Love them, they're so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
But like you said, they do everything for you, so you can just push it and you can go faster, and the steering is a lot easier.
Yeah, it'll tell you what's going on with the car.
You learn it through doing this. You actually can learn driving a little better through a car that you can kind of feel everything through, and it's not, like you said, it's not a negative feel. You just you can feel the road.
Yeah,
it's not harsh, but you know there's bumps. This one's wavy. There's a couple dips. Whatever, you feel everything through this car, and he enjoyed it so much. And I respect him. He's like my favorite car, you know, blog. You know, him, Doug DeMuro, all of them have done this car and just have glowing reviews of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, for the price, I just want to get into it. It's definitely.
It brings you into Porsche ownership without having to spend the big bucks, which is
Yes.
nice, because you can easily spend big money. And even on the aftermarket right now, and I don't know what the aftermarket's really been looking like. You've looked more at the aftermarket lately than I have. The Porsche market used to be, you could find like a 911 Carrera, like some of the older models from this, like late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
You could probably spend 30, 40 grand, but then you're going to put about another 20 to 30 grand into one to bring it to that $50,000, $60,000 drive. You're already there with this, and you haven't even spent that much. I'm not going to mention what you spent, because I know what you spent. But you didn't even spend anywhere near that to pick this up.
I spent less than, just put it like, I couldn't go buy a Honda Civic right now, a newer one, for the price I paid for
yeah,
this.
which is incredible, because that's almost unheard of. Now, of course, you went outside of the California market.
Right.
Us being in the California market, that kind of hurts us a little bit on the aftermarket when it comes to owner vehicles like this, because they're in demand. Everyone here wants a cool car to drive. Everybody wants their weekend car. They want to be able to say, I own a Porsche or BMW, or, you know, even maybe going to like Mercedes. You get to start getting into Astons, then you start getting the higher end with, you know, the people that we know that have Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLaren. You know, it really depends on what your niche is. This can give you a lot of that niche without spending the money, which is incredible. And we're just kind of driving it on a Sunday morning. I wish the weather was a little nicer today. I mean, living in Southern California, you'd think that we'd have sun all the time, but it's cloudy today. People are out running their Sunday errands. We're running around. We're going to go ahead and out and get coffee here and get a little breakfast. And this is just the kind of car that you want to have for that sort of.
You can just get in and go.
Yeah.
They're fairly cheap to work on. Which there's a 911 right
Yeah.
They're fairly cheap to work on. You know that we're getting into the Rancho Santa Fe area. This is all Porsche.
This is where this car lives
Porsches.
right here, is right in this area where I like to test. And, you know, like you say, fairly cheap to work on. I mean, to a degree, that's something you have to look at as you get into older vehicles.
Right.
Right now, parts, being able to find things is kind of difficult from an aftermarket standpoint, not from
For the newer ones.
modification.
For these,
You can find
you can
stuff.
find parts. They're cheap.
Oh, that's great.
They're fairly easy to work on.
Yeah.
And again, with the reviews that I've read, the flat six in this car is so dependable. People push these well over 200-something thousand miles.
That's incredible.
And I only have 47.
Yeah, so you'll have this car. I mean, it'll last you for a while, but you're going to be selling it. So, you know, I've known you 25 years. You're getting ready to leave California. You're smart. You're getting out of here, and you're going to sell this. And I kind of wish you weren't, but where you're going, I mean, you're going to Washington State, right, is where you're headed. So, you know, it's a little bit of a different market up there. A lot of guys up there are more into trucks because you got the snow, and that makes this vehicle only certain times of the year type vehicle for when it's driven. So that's
the rain and all the craziness.
Yeah, you're not going to be bringing it out in the rain necessarily. I mean, those people aren't like we are here in California, where it's raining, we'll take the car out, no big deal.
I mean, I will.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. I don't want to devalue a great car.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be able to drive it on the roads out here and go out and do stuff. And if I have it out there, it's going to be.
Yeah, and you've got a great driver. And the 6-speed manual's got good feedback. I mean, I've been able to smoothly shift it. The fact that it's a short shifter is great because I can click it into gear real fast.
Right.
Get it where I need to.
And it almost feels gated. You feel the clicks. That got me immediately when I drove it. You know, usually on a lot of cars when you're shifting, it's just 1 to 2. You know, like you're feeling you're just going straight over. This has that middle click, 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 click.
I
click.
dig how this just wants to go right into gear and go, and it really adds to the enjoyment of it. I mean, as we put the foot down a little bit.
That's the one thing you feel all of it all the time. Like it's such a linear acceleration that you're never feeling a lag. Even as you're getting to the top, you're like, okay, and then you shift gears, and usually there's a little dip to come back up. There's no dip. I think that's why this became my favorite, like the favorite car I've driven, even over some of the newer cars, is you get all of that responsiveness. And don't get me wrong, you get that out of the 5 to 1,000 horsepower cars too, but it's too much power that you can't use all the time.
Yeah.
This you can use all the time.
Yeah, it's usable power all the way through the power band as you drive, and as we get more into some twistier parts of the road, the feeling of the vehicle, I don't feel too wallowy in the seat. I mean, the seat's holding me pretty decently for being a little bit of an older seat. It's got good bolstering to keep me planted. I'm a little bit set back because you and I sit a little bit differently in the seat, so it's but it feels good for just cruising. I mean, we've got a cool little MG in front of us.
Super clean.
That's got to be a 1960s MG in front of us, and we're going 45 around corners that we're supposed to be doing 25. And he's out having a good Sunday with his wife.
Oh yeah,
driving.
he's not. It's not even leaning. That thing is beautiful.
No, that is a gorgeous MG. But you know, and I meant to mention earlier, talking about Matt Farah. Did you see what he picked up recently?
That's okay, and that's again. What sold me after I bought this car, he can pick any car he wants. He's driven all of them. He knows
and he has a bunch of different cool cars himself. And he went out and bought, I think as his driver, and I believe it's called Raspberry Metallic.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's not a rose gold color. It's kind of almost like a metallic light purple. It's kind of a weird looking color.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe.
It's a mixture between like say like a periwinkle purple and a rose gold.
Yeah, and he went out and
then it's got like an oxblood interior. It's a great spec, but what kind of car is it?
It's a Cayman, and that's
He could have picked anything.
The crazy
and he had it custom made.
Yeah, he had it custom made through Porsche, which Porsche does a lot of things these days where if you want certain aspects in the car, you pay a little extra money, they'll do it for you. So if you want a specific color in the car, you go to them, you give them a paint chip, and say, hey, I really want my car this color. They will do it for an extra $5,000.
Yeah.
I want certain aspects of the interior.
It's the most, from what I've heard, it's the most customizable company of any car brand. Meaning you can, down to the stitching, down to the shift knob, down to the you can order a car from them exactly how you want it.
Yeah, and it really adds to the experience of being a Porsche owner. And if they still do it, now they offered this to my parents when they bought their car, you can actually go to Germany, watch it come off the assembly line, and go drive it on their test track, I believe. And I think BMW at one point in time was doing this as well. Well, when COVID hit, that took a lot of that away because of international travel. They didn't want the Americans coming over who potentially are carrying COVID and whatnot. So I think they took that away. But for new Porsche owners, that's something that you get the opportunity to do. In fact, it's something where if I could ever afford one, it might be worth actually going to experience Germany because they have what they have there at the factory in Stuttgart. They have, you know, the Nürburgring Ring, which I would love to go drive the Nürburgring Ring one day just to see what that is like. And then, of course, the Autobahn. So the Germans really know what it means to have a vehicle to go drive, to get the driving experience that you want to be able to have and the enjoyment out of it versus, say, some of the other markets or some of the brands that are on the market. So to be able to experience this is one heck of an opportunity for sure.
That's and when you were talking about seating positions earlier, you know, the way they build their cars, they build them for a driver. They don't build, you know what I mean? Like, they build them to drive.
Sure, they take a lot.
And I didn't really take that into consideration because, you know, most of the newer ones you sit in, they have a great bucket, which is actually a really comfortable bucket seat out of, you know, carbon bucket, stuff like that. But your seating position, even in this, it's like, they don't let you go too far away from the steering wheel. They don't let you go too close.
Sure.
And you feel like you're like, I mean, you're a little taller than I am. I've had buddies that are a little taller than you. I have, you know, people shorter than us, and you know, they're just like, you can't really get comfortable, meaning like relaxed, comfortable, but you can get. It's like the perfect driving position and feel for this car. You know what I mean? It's just, and I think they do that with through their engineering, and like you said, through being able to test it through the Nürburgring, fucking, you know, just Autobahn, all of that stuff, and then they also have.
Porsche, all the racing programs too.
And the Porsche, you know, they have Porsche in LA where you can go race in LA. In Atlanta, you can go race out there.
Yeah, they've got the Porsche experience.
Right, you can go out there and drive cars out there.
And they get a lot of feedback from not only the owners, but they get it from the racing program as well. Much like Corvette does with their Corvette racing program. They've applied that to the C7. Well, really, the C6, the C7, and the C8 over the last number of years. And I've driven everything from the C4 model all the way up to the C7. And I've driven a few different Porsches. So this is definitely, you know, the experience of being able to drive a Porsche and at this level has really been great. And you can even take this out to a track day and probably be pretty competitive.
A lot of people do, and that's some of the guys I started to follow, you know, online that have these cars. They literally will drive them to work one day and track them that weekend. You know, they'll come do a couple tweaks here and there.
Yeah, put a different set of tires on them.
And they just go and track the car.
Yeah.
Because it has exactly what you need. You don't need too much power. You know, you're sitting in second and third pretty much the whole time anyway.
To a degree, it depends on the track.
Yes, but just local small tracks. But yeah, like here, and the sprint booster thing I was telling you about. So when you're driving, normally in a car, if you like see a car, I need to go get ahead of that car, you'll downshift to go kind of go around them.
Sure.
This I've noticed even in sixth gear on the freeway, they're like, I need to get around that car. I'll just gas it a little, and I mean, like I said, the power's always there.
Yeah.
And it just immediately starts to accelerating.
Sprint booster adjusts the drive-by-wire where it doesn't delay your throttle ball.
Right, so I don't always use that. I mean, it's off right now, and I'll show you it once we get into a straight area.
Yeah,
so
it's great.
It basically turns off that electronic, what is it, the transmission control.
Yeah.
And just instantly gives you that torque.
Yeah, it's the throttle control.
Where there's no lag.
That's incredible.
And there's 2 seconds. So if you want to feel it, it's right by your leg right here. And you just hold the button down, it'll turn green, and then hit the gas, and feel it.
Yeah, that does pick up a little quicker. We're in a little bit of a higher gear, but it definitely, I mean, we can...
When I turn it off, you can feel it. You're like, whoa! It like goes for like
yeah.
something. And then if you turn it to the next mode,
I'll let you do it. So. Oh, yeah.
it's instant. Like you're throwing me back just touching the gas.
Yeah, I mean, it's instantaneous for what it's doing, which is an awesome little feature
So
to
it was
have.
sport to track. Yeah, it was something that was previous installed. I was like, what is this? Right up on it, I'm like, oh, that's nice.
And the drive-by-wire, of course, you know, it's something that they've done in a lot of the newer model vehicles.
Yes.
My own car has it with my little Mazda. You know, it's something where they took that technology over from the motorsport programs because of what they've done these days with clutches. I mean, we're on a standard 6-speed transmission, which is pretty awesome because getting to drive a Porsche with a manual transmission is really the way to do it. You don't want this PDK paddle shift stuff. To me,
that's fun for driving around town and stuff, and if you wanted a daily driver. But if you really want to do this, and really experience it, you gotta drive the whole car.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not that it's wrong. I love those cars through these canyons, and you can push those a little harder. But again, you're not thinking about as much of the the road feel and all of that stuff. It's kind of taken away from you. It's not a bad thing. It's just it's different. You know what I mean? It's a lot of power. You know, it's 500-600 plus horsepower
with the newer models.
With a bigger car, and with the PDK, which is it's fun transmission to drive. But it's like if you really want to drive the car, you kind of need to feel it in the manual. Yeah. In the mountains, like on curves.
Well, the PDK technology came over from what they got in the racing world because they were going over to basically the clutchless transmissions.
Yes.
And making it to where it was an instantaneous shift. And Porsche found that, and they a little bit came over from F1 as well. When you're, how did I do that? Wow.
No, it's probably because it's on the sprint booster. Because like I said, it changes the throttle response. Yeah. So watch, you'll feel like go take off in this, or not just go in this. You feel how it's instant.
Yeah, I may have been in second gear when I did that too.
Well, I've done into this once I have that on.
Let's get the pickup here. Oh yeah, that's definitely. Yeah. And you can hear.
I'm not sure on the brakes on this thing, so let's. You can feel it, but I'm not 100% on how great they are. I mean, other Porsche. But did you? I mean, it's like as soon as you touch it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm already going. Oh, and then as you're driving, you just right now, just keep your foot on the accelerator. Now watch out. Just goodbye.
Oh yeah.
It just turns it off. It's not bad, but it's almost like once you do it, you're like, oh, this almost feels boring.
Yeah, but that definitely can put some smiles on the face for sure. You know, that'll. Oh yeah, I'm not even touching the throttle.
Did you hear it?
Yeah.
You didn't even throttle up, and it sounded like you did.
It picks back up.
It's like no, we're just giving you more of that throttle response immediately.
Man, that's a great fun feel. Well, Johnny, I appreciate you giving me the chance to drive. It's gonna be kind of crappy that you're leaving California, man. We've been doing this for so long.
20 years. 20 plus years.
And you've definitely got the California car because this is, you've kind of at that point now where it's like, well, I've got the Porsche, I've got the cool car, now I'm gonna leave California. Yeah. So it's like
going there to make more money.
Yeah.
And now that I've had this experience, and like you said, I was an import guy through the builds, but I love everything. That's the thing I love.
You did the muscle car stuff though. That was the one.
I never built a muscle car because I just never saw the point of spending more money. You know what I mean? For a heavier car that's going to kill my gas.
Yeah.
And I, especially growing up as a tuner, I'm like, oh, I can spend this much money, get the car, get the same amount of horsepower with a build.
Yeah.
But then I'm also getting really good gas mileage, which is expensive out here. It's $7 a gallon right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was just kind of like, do I want to spend the more money on like more mods, or do I want to spend it on my gas all the time? And that's where I have nothing against muscle. I love muscle cars. They're so much fun to build. The sounds are great. It's just when it comes down to the nuts of it, if I'm going to build something to drive, I don't want some big clunky heavy thing. Those are great for fast straight line cars, but I like to drive around curves and stuff like that. And I don't want to have to worry about the oversteer or the weight of the car throwing me around the corner too much. And then this. Out of all the cars, it's just like, the balance is so up.
Yeah.
It surprised me so much that even though I'm selling this one, my next car is going to probably be a 981 or a 718 Cayman, because it's just the next step up. I will, if I want to stick with the 981 because you can still get a 6-speed in them, where I think the 718s are all PDK.
Yeah, I believe they are at this point.
Which eventually I will probably go to, but I still want this feel, and I just love the feel of this manual. It's so crisp.
The drive feel is great. I mean, the feedback to me and the driving through the steering input, it's been really good. And then of course the shifting and I can even feel the rear end a little bit, what it's telling me that it's doing and what the car is doing through a corner. So it'd be interesting to have this out on a good track day, because then you can really push it in, of course, in an environment where it's a little bit more designed for that kind of driving. As you guys see that I push it a little bit in the videos. I have a lot of driving experience. I have a lot of race car experience. Don't do what I do and try to emulate what I do, because I wouldn't want to see somebody say, hey, I saw him do it, I could do it too. Well,
that was one reason why I wanted you to drive it, because I know you have all of the drive. You go out.
I've got 20 years. I've got 20 years of drive, 25 plus years of race car experience and driving experience. So I kind of know where to put a car and really have it be on that edge to where, okay, we can dial it back a little bit and still have a really good time. So Johnny, again, thank you for showing me the car. I'm sad to see that you're leaving California. For now, guys, this is Brad with Cars, Coffee, and Donuts here in San Diego, and of course Lucky 7 Racing. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. You guys have a good weekend.